And the next person I'd like to introduce to you is another very dear friend of mine, Mark Finnan. And Mark gave me a little bio, and usually I take these bios and kind of paraphrase from it, but I read this and I thought, you know, Mark being a professional writer, he wrote it so well, it'd be unfair just to, it would be just, I couldn't paraphrase as well, so I'm going to read it to you. It says, Mark encountered the Casey material in his 20s as part of his spiritual searching and has been a member of the ARE since the mid-70s. He studied transformational work at the Center for Living Research, a spiritual center in Dublin, Ireland, before coming to Canada in 1975 to help establish the Shelter Valley Spiritual Center in southern Ontario. Since then, he has written about and presented numerous talks and workshops on subjects related to individual spiritual development. Interested from youth in the creative process, he trained as an actor in London, England, and has performed on stages in Ireland, England, and Canada. He was the founder of the Celtic Arts Centre in Galway, Ireland. He is a published author, a TV documentary scriptwriter, and a playwright. Combining his interest and involvement in theater with his spiritual path, he has written and presented a series of one-man sacred dramas. The Master and the Essenes was seen twice at the ARE and at the Fellowship of the Inner Light in Virginia Beach. Along with the Messiah Mystery, it has been performed in numerous Unity Centers and churches in Canada and the U.S. The third play in the series, A New Heaven and a New Earth, which is the story of John and Ephesus, was written following Mark's stay on the sacred island of Patmos. It has recently had its Canadian premiere and will be presented this coming Friday night at the Fellowship Center at 7 p.m. Please come if you can. Mark also teaches a creative spiritual development process, a progressive approach to conscious raising with practical application in everyday life. So, without further ado, let me invite Mark up.
Gee, Bruce, that was really good. I think I got it all in. Kind of a little embarrassing afterwards. It's really a great pleasure to be here. First, I want to tell you a little story. But first of all, let me get my notes out. My good partner always reminds me, and she did last night, called me up and said, now don't forget your notes, Mark. You know, you have this tendency to wander off in so many different directions, so be sure to have your notes and read from your notes if you have to. So anyway, my notes are here. I may not read from them, but don't tell her. Anyway, I just want to share something with you, two things. About 3 years ago, I was down here. It was roughly around this. It was around this time of the year. When did Hurricane Sandy happen? 3 years ago, in October. We've all forgotten about that. How could we? But anyway, and I was due to speak here on the Sunday, just like now. I think it was later in the month, actually. And I was here till the end of the month. I had to leave on the Tuesday after the service. Fly back to Canada. I had work to do. And on the Saturday night, the winds were whipping up. Sandy was kind of coming in close. And the airline called me very early on Saturday morning, I don't know, 3 o'clock or something, and said, you know, there's a flight leaving at 9 o'clock, and you should be on it because we can't guarantee that if you don't get that flight, we may not get you back. We don't know when the planes will again be flying out if Sandy hits. You know, so I really had no option but to go. But how to get to the airport, I hadn't rented a car that year. And so I called a cab company and the limo people, and there was nothing doing. I couldn't get to the airport for some reason. I couldn't get a ride with them for some reason. But I thought, well, I scratched my head, and who do I ask? And so I actually did contact the late Michael McCarthy. You remember Michael and Annette? And they came in their little mini home van, and he rode me hell for leather on back roads I never knew existed and got me to the airport on time. And I was able to get home, and it was just as well because we also were hit by some of the winds that were whipped up by Sandy. But anyway, when I was getting ready to come down here this year, I just finished a major project that I was involved in, a theatrical project, and I was getting my mind finally around coming down here, and then there was all this talk on the news of another hurricane coming in. And I thought, God, well, in the words of the inimitable Yogi Berra, it was like deja vu all over again. And I thought, well, let's see how this plays out. And of course, nature very kindly decided that to take that hurricane out of the ocean. And so I breathed a sigh of relief, because I so look forward to coming down here for all kinds of reasons. One of the primary ones being here and sharing some things with you. The other thing I just wanted to briefly mention was that it must have been a great time here in the 70s. 77 must have been a special year. But it got me thinking about the fact that in the mid-70s, that's when I came to Canada from Ireland. And I was living, we were homesteading. We were back to the Londers at that time. I was a 20-something guy, and had given up, all my efforts to be a big star on the London stage. It wasn't going to happen, and so I went back to Ireland with my wife, and anyway, eventually we had 2 children, and I was doing some work in the theater, and I was writing different things, and I was writing also about how I had gone to the land, and we were growing all our own food, and we had developed a little mini retreat center that people were coming down that I knew in the TV business, totally stressed out on a Friday night, and they would crash for the whole weekend. We didn't even have to feed them. It was quite extraordinary. They just slept all the way through, many of them, and then they would get back into the grind on Monday morning. But anyway, we did feed them, of course, because my wife was a great cook. So anyway, things were unraveling socially and politically in Ireland. There was a time of what we colloquially call the Troubles, shooting each other, but we just got the Troubles. But there were bombs exploding actually in Dublin, and which got me quite concerned because I was working the theatre in Dublin, and it looked like at that time things were spreading down southwards from the north, where there was still that terrible killing and brutality going on both sides. And the UDF, which was the equivalent of the Sinn Féin on the other side, were coming down and exploding bombs in the south. And I was really concerned, naturally, as a father, for my own children and what was going to happen to our society and so forth. So I started to think about, well, how do I get out of here with my children? And being an actor and a writer, there was no way I would qualify for coming to Canada. This point system that we have, the same here in the States, I guess. And so, I just never really pursued that. And I had written an article about what we were doing on the land and having this little retreat center and meditating. And we started a folk theater with some local people that became quite a hit. But anyway, with the tourists. So one day I got a letter from a guy here in Canada. He said, by the way, I read an article of yours in Prevention magazine. It was Rodale Press had picked up this article and had run with it. They didn't pay me anything, but that was okay. And he had read this article. And he said, would you be interested in coming to Canada? He said, I think I can arrange that. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And he did. I don't know if he paid off some customs people or what he did, but I got access to Canada. I was cleared and with my family. And I thought, well, God is good, but you got to be doing your thing. And in this case, it was writing. Because in the place where we were, it was quite remote. I thought, well, I can still write and I can send out articles and get a few bucks, and occasionally work with it. And so I think it was the life force. The universe kind of answered the creative urge that we all have, and that if we pursue, can open doors for us. And the universe always answers us when we are true to what is our soul's purpose. And I have living knowledge of that time and time and time again. And I just love to share these kind of stories because it's a living knowledge I'm going to speak to you and I'm going to quote things, but it's, more on an intellectual level and it's on paper, words from paper. But when we have these kind of experiences and we know that there is a plan at work here and we just got to get with that plan and things will work out. And they did. And when I came to Canada, I made contact with the original project that I was involved in. Turned out to be very, very challenging because the person at the head of it wasn't very spiritual minded and really didn't have much time for people stopping for meditation, when it was time to do something else and so forth. But I, through another friend, made contact with a group of people in Southern Ontario who were familiar with the KC material and other esoteric materials. I wanted to start a major adult spiritual education center. And then I made contact with them and became part of the founding members of that Shelter Valley Center that Bruce had mentioned. And that, to me, confirmed the fact that, the universe always helps us if we, will go with it. Again, quoting Yogi Berra, when there's a fork in the road, take it. And, it may not be where you want to go, but then you can go back and take the other fork. So there is something to the great philosopher Yogi Berra. Anyway, so I'm thankful. I should have got up and lit a candle on that. I'm very, very thankful for having been able to come to Canada and all that has resulted in, including coming down here and making some wonderful friends and doing work that I just love doing. Of course, I'm still working away in theatre, but in a different kind of way than I had worked in London and Dublin, and focusing mostly on taking spiritual material, sacred material, very much inspired originally by the case of material, but it's spread out, and taking it and giving it a dramatic form. Because it's been my experience that through the arts, and you see it just Dave's singing and the beautiful piano playing, it touches your soul, it goes beyond the intellect, and we are inspired, we are uplifted, we are touched, we are motivated, we are enriched. And so that's my understanding of the arts from very early age. Thanks most of all to our good friend Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, whoever he was. He just touched so many people with his wonderful gifts, and I was one of them from early school days. Decided I want to be an actor and I want to be a writer because of this guy, because he has so much to say, and I want to act some of these plays, which I did. But of course then I decided, well, I shall write my own plays, which I did. But the plays that I've been working on for the last number of years, and one of which I'll do on Friday, and it sounds like I'm just building up to a big plug for myself, but it's The New Heaven and New Earth. It's taken from Revelation. The whole play is about John, the beloved, that wonderful apostle, the youngest of the apostles, so we're told, of Jesus, and how he had this marvelous vision on Patmos. So after spending time in the cave, where he was alleged to have had this vision, and wandering around that island for many days, and sleeping out in the open, and just having a very, very special time, I was finally able to finish that play, and you'll see it here if you come on Friday night. It's all about the fact that we are spiritual people, definitely spiritual people, and we can know God. And that whole thing of Revelation, although it is a mystery to many people, is really telling us, you are a spiritual being, and you can know God within the temple of your own body. And but to present that in theatre form was my challenge, and we'll see how it works out on Friday night. Okay, that's done. Okay, back to my notes. The perennial question since time immemorial, and to the present day, of course, has always been, who am I? What am I? And of course, adjunct to those are the questions of, well, where did I come from? What am I doing here? Where the dickens am I going? And as you know, sages, seers, philosophers, poets have pondered and given answers to this perennial question since time immemorial. And for me, and it's different for everybody, but for me, the answers to that question eventually came to me thanks in part to the Casey material, which encouraged me to go within, ask questions, to seek within, to meditate, and to get a little more in touch with the deeper level of my being that I had done before. Even though I had, well, in London, I was there at the whole scene of the Beatles and all of that, and the interest in meditation, and I was trying all kinds of Eastern mysticism, dabbling in things, really, but because I had been brought up a Catholic, for good or ill, Irish Catholicism was a very rare breed of Catholicism. But anyway, I did come away from that experience with a knowledge of the Christ. Well, I should say a knowledge about the Christ, and which kind of was really in my blood. And I could not get away from that. And I started to think, well, there has to be a way in which we can, just as in the Eastern tradition, we can seek enlightenment, following our guru and so forth. There has to be a way in which we can actually embrace and activate from within ourselves these wonderful teachings that Jesus gave us. And that led me on a quest, and eventually to the Casey material. Part of that quest was, of course, coming from Canada. I didn't know that at the time, but coming from Ireland to Canada to here, eventually down here, and spending time at the ARE and really getting connected with the Casey material, and all of that entailed. Well, we know that from the sacred texts of all the great religions, there is the one common teaching, and that is that we are spiritual beings living in these physical bodies. And there's the rub, as Shakespeare would say, because we have become so immersed in this physical consciousness that we can have a dickens of a time, in spite of our ideals, our highest purpose that we have set for ourselves, which we should all do, really actualizing and becoming more aware of the spiritual aspect of ourselves. And that is the great journey, the great quest, the quest for the Holy Grail. That's it. And we can all be the heroes and heroines of the Grail, if we so choose. And, of course, we all have to find our own path in that. So, as, again, quoting Yogi Berra, when you come to a fork in the road, just take it. Take it. It may be the right one. In the Casey readings, and I'm not going to quote at length from the Casey readings, but I'm sure this is also true of the Paul Solomon readings, and that we are told that in man's analysis and understanding of himself, it is well to know from whence he came, as to know whether he, she, and when I use the word him or God, I'm always referring to Father, Mother, God, him, her, he or she is going. And also, for the beginning of knowledge is to know self and self's relationship to God. Now, it's very easy for us to go off on I won't say a wild goose chase, because it's not really, but on a track where we're seeking God through so many different sources. There's this great speaker, there's that wonderful book, and have you seen that documentary? Oh, I've got to see that. It really does things. But ultimately, we come to the understanding that it is within ourself, in this self and in this body that I inhabited, that we can know God, and that we can experience God, and that we can be channels of expression for the God force through those wonderful gifts, the fruits of the Spirit. And it has taken me a long time to really kind of fine-tune my sense of perception, and realizing that the Spirit, it can be so elusive, but to know that we are moving with the Spirit in the way in which we are relating to each other, that if we have the right spirit in that relationship, if we have the right spirit when we go out of our house in the mornings, we are carrying God with us, and we are being vessels of blessing to other people. And so this is why it's so important in my experience. And of course, many people emphasize this far more advanced than I am, to say that it is so important what we do when we wake up in the mornings. You know, we come from a place, having been asleep, what we call sleep, just we're going into another state of consciousness in which, the higher forces can speak to us, can help us and guide us. If I had never gone to any other source or found out from any other source, had any other experience, from dreams alone, I know that there is a higher intelligence. And anybody who has studied their dreams obviously knows this, that there is a higher intelligence guiding us, warning us, sometimes chastising us, or so it seems, really knocking us on the head with some really vivid, powerful imagery to say, hey, look out here, or look up, or this is what you've done. Here's a pat on the back, or on the soul, whatever. And keep it up, kid. You're doing good. And we all need that kind of direction from inside. But dreams alone are this wonderful source of inner direction from the higher, from God. But anyway, coming away from the dream is when we wake up in the morning. It's very, very easy for our consciousness suddenly to slip right back into the material. And we think about, this is the day, I got to do this, or I got to do that, or what's for breakfast? I wondered this morning, or we smell the bacon and, we're right into that body again. So it's a very, very important discipline to take the time in the morning to pray, to have a prayer time, to meditate, to think about who you are, who you really are, and how you want to express yourself this day. Now, we all spend probably too much time sometimes thinking about our appearance and how we're dressed on a given day. And we're going to a very special interview, we're doing something a little extraordinary, going to meet that special person for dinner, whatever. Or we got something really very significant going on. And we may take a lot of time looking out for our appearance. But if we take the time to think about the soul's appearance on a given day, and every day, and we go out into that day having prepared ourselves mentally and emotionally to be in tune with our highest ideal, and to do that consistently, there is no doubt that we do experience a growth taking place, and the capacities to accentuate and experience and share those wonderful fruits of the Spirit, like joyfulness, forgiveness, all those wonderful traits that Jesus spoke about: patience, compassion, a loving smile, a helpful hand, And it's a great thrill. I mean, it really is a wonderful thrill to be on the street and you find that suddenly somebody's in need of some help, or maybe a small little thing. Somebody's dropped something, on the previous day you might have just walked past, you were busy, But on that given day, because you have prepared yourself, you're in a state of consciousness that allows you to be this wonderful gift to that person, which may be the fact that you bend down, pick up something for them, or you smile at somebody, or you share a smile about some children that are playing around you, and other people are looking at them. And I was waiting for to go through the customs at Toronto Airport. Not everybody's favorite pastime by any means, especially at Toronto Airport. And this woman was in front of me. I think she was Pakistan, and she had two little children. And she had a lot of luggage with her, and these two. And one of the little girls was fascinated by the fact that before you go into, to take off your shoes and all your stuff and all that kind of thing, people were putting water bottles in a little container, or they were leaving them on a shelf, And so you had all these little water bottles around, And one of these little children, little girl, she got so fascinated by these water bottles. And you could see her mind working overtime. She's thinking, well, what is all this about? And she had decided, I'm going to have one of those. My mother said, no, you can't do that. And of course, more water bubbles would come. People would shove them in the holes, and she was fascinated. So she wasn't going to leave, and the mother wanted her to come with. The customs people were waiting for her to come in with the children. And everybody else would be held up behind her, watching this thing unfold. And there was a little bit of tension building here, get that kid in. So the mother was like, come on. And then she started to scream, and as only a child could do. And it was just fun. There's a drama unfolding here. How is it going to play out? All these people wanting to get on the airplane, get through. It's not the best of times to have something like this happen. And this kid was just I'm going to stay here. I'm going to get one of those water bottles. And I'm going to yell to her. And she did. And so I stood there and I looked at her and I said, do you want one of those water bottles? And she she was totally startled. She goes, who are you? And I said, but I think, I really think your mother wants you. And you should go. Because, and it sort of changed the whole vibration of the scene. People started to laugh. I don't know if they were laughing at me. I didn't care. And I really was having a nice time with this little child. We were talking. And so she kind of quieted down enough for her mum to come and grab her, on the sly and just whisk her off. Of course, she started to scream again. But the drama was over. And it was really a really nice experience. Now, why am I telling you this? I don't know. I've gone off again. Anyway, it's a good story because it shows how if you're if you're in the state of consciousness in some sense of inner harmony, which I when I'm going on a trip I try to work on this and I bring them because you never know who you're going to meet at airports. And airports are very interesting, fascinating, wonderful places to meet people, and you never know what's going to unfold. Could be very serious. So I always feel that it's very, very important. Just like when you get in a car, of course, it's very, very important, the state of consciousness that you're in and what you surround yourself with when you go into these situations. And I thought, well, thank you, God. That's really great. I helped this lady, I think, get through this, and this little child, And there was we had this moment where we had this great eye contact, and she was looking at me, who are you? And it kind of, things worked out. So, be prepared in the morning for our day. And now, that's, I hear time and time again, people tell me, well, I don't have the time. Phooey. Poor you. And it is poor us if we don't make the time to do this. To allow God to bless us and for us to have the opportunity to bless other people in some little way. And it may just be a smile, or maybe that thing of just being able to say to that child, to talk to that child, which I was very grateful for and deeply. Eula Allen, in her book Before the Beginning, put the whole thing of creation this way. I don't know if you're familiar with Eula Allen. She wrote, she studied a lot of the Casey material on creation. In Genesis, we're told that we were created to be like God, to be companions with God. Man and woman, He created them. And that if you read Genesis carefully, there are two creations. There's a spiritual creation, and then there's a physical creation. So first we were pure spirit, and then we entered into materiality, and we've been trying to get back to the pure spiritual state ever since. And I think it's good to know from whence we came, and to have a grounding in that knowledge, even if it is initially at the intellectual level, that we have a sense of a heritage, a spiritual heritage, and from that we can move forward. In her book, Before the Beginning, she said it this way: our souls were created as sons and daughters. And I have in brackets, emanations from God, the first cause. Each was endowed with the Christ consciousness, which is the awareness of our oneness with God. But through our misuse of free will and entering into materiality, that blissful state of consciousness deteriorated over time. And we are all struggling now, life after life, to regain it. Just as God could build a state of consciousness to image creation, we have free will as to our choice of consciousness and what we want to create. And this is the crux of the matter, as to what do we do with our minds. Because, again, referring to Casey, but not only Casey, the mind, we know the mind is the builder, the bridge between the spiritual and the physical. And it is in the particular conscious, disciplined use of the mind that we can cross that bridge and begin to infuse our consciousness and our physical bodies with the light of the Christ. You all know about the spiritual centers in the body. I'm not going to get into that right in this talk, but if anyone's interested in a deeper workshop, later in the week, I'm here for 2 weeks. They can talk to me afterwards, and we can arrange maybe a group happening. So the whole business of learning how to use the mind in a spiritual way to bring about a tremendous change in our life so that we can go forward as a more spiritual-oriented human being in a physical experience. There are all kinds of processes to do that, and I'm just teaching one of them, which I was very gifted to learn back in Ireland, as Bruce said, at the Centre for Living Research. And basically it was teaching us how to train our own imaginations consciously. You know, the great mystic English poet William Blake said, imagination in and of itself is proof of the divine. Imagination. Here's a wonderful quote from Sri Rektaswar Giri, who was the guru for Paramahansa Yogananda. The deeper the self-realization of a man or a woman, the more he influences or she influences this whole universe by his or her subtle spiritual vibrations. And the less he himself or she herself is influenced by the phenomenal flux of the world. And to that he added, imagination is the key to the mastery of the subtle laws which determine one's growth, one's health, and one's well-being. And of course, our great friend William Shakespeare. And as imagination bodies forth the forms of those things unknown, unseen, the poet's pen turns them to shape and gives to airy nothing a local habitation, and it may. Great individual aware of the powers of the imagination. So it is very, very important for us to learn how to use our imagination in a very coordinated, conscious way for our own betterment and for the betterment of others. And that I have devoted a lot of my time and energy to teaching and training folks how to do this. Now, as an actor, one of the most incredible things for me, I studied with a system called the Stanislavski system, not the Americanized version like Kazan, the method, but Stanislavski was very, very interested in getting people, actors particularly, to delve into their own knowledge of themselves and to use the knowledge of themselves, their emotional knowledge, their experiences in life, to bring to bear on the characters they were playing so that they became more real. And this is what we do. But we are actors on the cosmic stage, in this great divine drama. And as we bring these higher emotions and higher attitudes to bear into the parts we are playing in this cosmic drama, we are fulfilling our purpose as creations of God in this wonderful stage of life. I think I'll sort of leave it there. And if you want to talk to me afterwards about the work, I'll be happy to do so. Okay.